What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the 2026 Mentorship. This is the fourth yearly mentorship since the start of Galaxy Trading a couple years back. I'm looking forward to this upcoming year as I think I've structured a pretty good yearly breakdown on the concepts and also us obviously incorporating them on a day-to-day basis as they arise. But in this first video, I wanted to just talk a little bit about the journey that I've been on since starting this years ago. Um, Maybe a little bit of motivation. I don't know. I'm not big for the external motivation, but I think my story will be helpful to some of you here. And, maybe you can kind of just get an idea as what it's really going to take to put yourself in a position to be consistently successful while doing this, because this is something that could chew you up and spit you out. And it still will, even when you are consistent and successful. It's just a matter of you learning from your mistakes and improving slowly but surely. So with all that being said, really, I want to take a little time machine back to 2018. So 2018, I'm in grad school. And while I'm in grad school, I'm working at a school as a teaching assistant in a special ed program. Now, while I was there, there was a little bit of downtime. If one of the students was in with a speech, pathologist, or, maybe they were in a PE, or I had a break or something like that, whatever it was. But, after a while, realizing how difficult that job really was and how I really wasn't all that passionate about it, I started to look into other avenues. And, you know, I'm like, I don't know, 23 at this time, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, all right, maybe if I start investing, like I could speed this up a little bit and maybe retire earlier so I don't have to do this for 30, 40 years. That was the thought process for me. And then obviously you learn pretty quickly that, like, okay, like dream big, kid. But as I, started to progress, I wouldn't really necessarily say I was even good at it, and I also didn't have that much money. So I was just putting little bits in on fractional shares on Robinhood and just trying to chip away. And, ultimately, I did okay. I mean, there was nothing really behind it. I was just, buy little stuff here. If it went up a little bit, I would take it off. There was no real like semblance of any structure or guide to what I was doing other than, oh wow, I made a couple of bucks. I'm gonna take it out here and go put it elsewhere. But and that's really how it was for a little over a year. And then that's when everything kind of flipped for me, and that was when COVID started in March of 2020. And like I said, I mean, I had a decent understanding of just like what the market was, share structure, all of that stuff that, is in kind of like stock market 101. I was up to speed there. Um, but when that COVID collapse happened, I I ended up getting pretty lucky, because looking back on it in hindsight, it was pretty risky what I did. But I came into the market while everything was getting smoked off of those COVID lows, and I decided to put a lot of money into the market. And, the rest is kind of history from there. But that time period where, I was basically looking at it as like long-term investments, and then you look up 2 months later and, everything's back to where it was, and, you have, a lot of money to mess around with. So I was able to build a pretty large account from 20 to 22. And at this point, really, in terms of like trading, I was, I didn't really necessarily even have a model. It wasn't like I was using anything specific. I had every moving average on the chart. I was looking at trend lines. I was doing this, that. And, it really wasn't as much trading as like just like swinging shares or even swinging options at that point. I was, but it wasn't anything really behind it. I really was kind of just getting lucky in terms of the direction, because everything was going up. Times were great. And then you hit a wall in 22 or 21 into 22, and that's when we had that bear market. And that was pretty challenging. Like I said, luckily I did build myself a little bit of a cushion, and at this time, that was right when I was just taking the leap into doing this full time. I made a good amount of money. I decided to go all in with this. Everybody thought I was crazy. I had a master's degree. It was, uh, you know, not really a path that many people take, but I decided that was the path for me. I mean, even when I was like in college or high school, like when I had like options, like, all right, you got to get a job, where you go, and like I would always go towards like delivery, or I don't know, work as a contractor, like a mason or something like that. And I would always do those kinds of jobs. And the reason for that was because like it wasn't a specific amount of money that I was getting, probably underpaid, but like you have the opportunity to earn tips, or you know, it just wasn't like finite, really. And I know, obviously, like, is it really finite to be a delivery guy at Planet Wings? Like, yeah, eventually, yeah, but like you could still make more money than somebody who's working at the supermarket, for example. So I was always like drawn towards that. And then obviously I made the decision to go to grad school to teach, which, obviously didn't pan out to be anything. Um, but during that time, I'm taking this leap of faith, and that's when things become a little bit more difficult. Everything that I had learned in the past about, all right, yep, we're long, everything's going up, this is great. um that's changing now, right? And I was lucky enough to link up with a few people, a few who are still in the group right now, actually. We linked up years ago, and we kind of went through the growing pains together. But there was one guy in there who taught me a lot, and a lot about kind of understanding my risk, and realizing that if I was going to go on this way, that money that I had made might be gone before you know it. So I was able to really be a little smarter in terms of how I was scaling, and um, I wasn't going too crazy with the amount that I was throwing around, and that saved me because it was not easy. There was a lot of ups and downs. And it wasn't just because the market was going down. It was just because I was still trying to find my way and figure out what to do. Um, because, as you know, or as you will find out, really the models that we use in here, doesn't matter what the directional bias is. We learn how to identify it, and then we can use it in either direction. So it doesn't necessarily mean, oh, we can only trade longs, we can only trade shorts. That's not the case. It's just at that time I really just didn't know. I didn't know what to look for. I didn't know anything. So then we get to a point where, as we're churning along through that bear market, and finally I'm like, all right, these ups and downs are so crazy. I'm considering just going back and looking to get a teaching job, do this on the side, because the ups and downs were just too much. It was just not consistent enough for this to be like a life path at this time. And that's when a buddy of mine, who is also in this group still, Ryan, introduced me to the ICT concepts. And he said, dude, you got to just check it out. And I was like, okay. So, obviously, naturally, this is me. At the time, what is this, 2022, 23? Still 22. I'm trying to do quick math here. I'm like 26 at this time, right? Yeah, that's about right. And 26, 27. And then I'm starting to go through this, and I'm like, whoa, okay. I just want to call bullshit so bad, but it was really difficult for me too, because there was a lot of backing behind the claims he was making. It was something that I was seeing in real time, and I was able to start to incorporate for myself. And, at that point, 2022, that's when it all just like clicked, in a sense, where I realized I need to put in a lot of time to do this. I probably watched every single ICT video that was on YouTube at that time. Uh, Staying up late, there were weekends where I could have went out and done stuff, and I decided not to. I decided to lock in and just really try to learn this and hone in on it, because it wasn't like I had a full-time gig in the background that was going to kind of buy me some time to take the time to learn this. Like, I really wanted to learn it as soon as possible. So I really dove in, and I sacrificed a lot, but it was all worth it. It turned out to be all worth it. Um, and one moment, or I should say, there's really two moments, but one moment that really was like, wow, was on one of his videos. He talked about, after you kind of understand the concepts, that you really want to start focusing on some things that really click with you and find a way to incorporate those to make them into a trading model, your own setup, your own personal setup that you look for and identify, something that you could back test and prove. And when you prove it, that's when you could start to execute on it. And when you could start to execute on it, now you're going to find consistency. And that's something that really clicked to me. And that was really the birth of the Mando model, the focal point, or really one of the two major models that we discuss in here on a day-to-day basis. But this gave me structure, okay? This model gave me the ability to, one, identify where my entry was going to be. It gave me a spot where I could place my stop loss, and it also gave me a target price to reach for, all while me being able to beforehand identify what my risk reward would be prior to even entering the trade. So I knew how much I could potentially make. I knew how much I could potentially lose. With options, you got to do a little bit more of an advanced mathematic equation, but which we'll get to in this, don't worry. But when you do it from a shares perspective or futures, because I was trading futures at the time as well, it was well defined before you even entered. You knew the exact number it was going to be. And that was something that I really needed, because when I was going through the ups and downs, yeah, there would be huge days, but there would also be really big bad days. And, the reason why they were big bad days is because I really didn't have a structured idea for where the trade went wrong. Where do I need to stop out on this, right? Because there would be times where I would stop out and then 2 seconds later the trade goes in the direction that I wanted it to, and now I'm sitting there like, what the hell, man? Like, what am I doing? It was just because I really didn't have an idea, um, really an idea of how to read price. So at that point, I'm starting to incorporate the model. Of course, there's bumps and bruises along the way when you're starting to build up on something, but finally got to a point with this model where it was something that was consistent. It was something that, like, I could act on, something that I could use and do it effectively, and I could prove it to myself, and I could share it with others, and others would be able to understand it, because it's not rocket science, right? Although it might seem or sound like it is, it's really not. But that was like the first time where I was like, wow, I'm back in control of this, and I can really do something with this. So then you go back, and then there was a second call, and this one probably hit home even more, because it was almost as if it was the perfect timing. Because at this time, I'm just starting, it's all rolling, it's starting to click, I'm starting to understand. But once you understand it, you then want to be able to back test it and prove it, right? And I was at that stage, and then came the execution and dealing with, your previous demons, right? You went through some up and down times. Do you really trust in yourself? Do you believe in yourself? Do others believe in you? Are you weighing other people's opinions on a day-to-day basis? And all of those things, it was difficult to manage. I've never been in a situation like that, and one of the things he said is that you don't really want to tell people what you're doing, because you don't need that negative energy in your life. These people are going to tell you, "Oh, you're crazy. Go get a job. What are you doing?" Uh, and realistically, it's not even because they believe in you or they don't believe in you, but it's more so they don't want you to do well while sitting at home on a computer while they're working their ass off every day, right? That was really the crux of the idea. And it's true, and you tell your family about it, and they're just going to be like, I don't know, right? They want what's best for you, and they want that to be in the safest manner, of course, right? And in this field, unlike others, you do have to risk your own capital, unless you're trading on a proffer. But even still, you got to risk your own capital in order to make more, right? So, there is risk associated with this. And I think that's naturally what family members would kind of push you in that direction to do. They just want what's best for you. And even though, uh, even though it may or may not be the truth, but Realistically, it's just outside external negativity or something that's going to make you second guess yourself, and you just don't need that. So logged back in, continued to work on the model, proved the model, and then from there I really started to pick up steam, and I started to make pretty serious consistent gains. And with that, I started to continue to grind away, started to keep posting, and that's when all of this came together, really, our whole group. Now, in the beginning, when I first started the group, there were a lot of people here who I had just been friends with for years and had been in and out and all of that. And then, you start to, because of course, when I start the group, I don't know if I'm going to be able to teach this in a good enough manner. Although I do have a master's in teaching, I just don't know if like my explanations for this, could really be good enough for someone else to pick up on it. And then over time, you start to see all of these people have consistent success with the concepts and the principles that we talk about, and specifically the two models that we talk about in here, the Mando model and the odd NAM trading model. And with that, it was just like, I really just cannot believe that, this has all come together in the way that it has to take this thing to the next level. And that's the goal. Um, at this point now, really, really happy with the progress we've made in here. I'm really looking forward to what the future holds. I think personally, I'm only getting better, whether that's at trading, whether that's at, um, my ability to explain or even to structure a mentorship as such, because I think that's really important as well. Um, and for everybody else, it's just a matter of, do you have the willingness to put in the time to do this? I'm not here to hold your hand. I don't need to. What I need to do is be able to trade every day and make money, because that's how I make money. So, I'm not here to handhold, but to me, there's no better place for you to learn a consistent trading model, one that you can back test and prove, and you will get to a point after a while where you do trust in the process, trust in your ability to read price and to incorporate these setups into your day-to-day trading. And when you get to that point, you can ask many people in the group who are already at this point, but I think they will tell you that, putting in that time and effort to get to that point was the best thing that they had done. So with all that being said, that's just a little background intro. The journey for me, it's been a long one, but it keeps getting better every year. And I'm looking forward to another great year with you all. We're going to make some serious waves this year. Believe that. Uh, Very similarly to some of the swings that I put out, there's never a doubt. There's never a doubt that we're going to come back in 2027 to this video, and we are going to say, wow, what a year. This was the game changer for me, right? Because I think that's what success is. Every year you could give yourself these goals and everything like that, but then you go back and you say, wow, like we leveled up this year, right? Just because you leveled up 2 years ago doesn't mean you can't level up again. Every year it should be a level up. And that's what I'm aiming to do. And I hope you guys are all on board with me, because we are most definitely going to do that if you guys join me in putting in the work to get to there. So, with that being said, we'll talk again in the next one. And I'll talk to you soon.